Hey, everybody. Chris Hauth is an endurance athlete and coach. He is a two-time Olympian. He's won Ironman races, and he's been on some epic endurance adventures all around the world. And if you asked Chris how much of his success was based on his mental training versus his physical training, he will tell you it's 100% mental. I was lucky enough to have Chris coach me for a couple of years through some great adventures, including running the rim to rim to rim through the Grand Canyon. I sat down with Chris to talk to him about his story as an athlete and a coach and how these training practices we can use in our everyday lives. Chris knows that we are better when we push ourselves and we face our fears and we reap the benefits that come from that. So we learn a lot about facing our fears and doing hard things as we sit down with Chris Hauth. Well, let's rock and roll. You're joining from Marin?
Yep, I am from home.
From home, yeah.
Home this week, off to Jackson next week, was in Sun Valley last week, and now I'm get to enjoy 1 week at home.
Yeah. That's the 29029 events.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So then we're off to Park City after that for Trail, which is our newest event. So that's it's a mountain marathon every day for 3 days.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah.
I want to come back and definitely ask you about 29029 because I think it's such a cool deal. I'd like to for folks to understand, your background a little bit, and I covered some of that in the intro. But talk about paying your dues. You've done that as an athlete and a coach, and
Yeah.
as an athlete, it's interesting. You had your upbringing really was between the U.S. and Germany, right? Can you walk through
Correct.
that a little bit?
Yeah, so I left the United States. I was born here, raised in Germany. Then I was here again, just back and forth. My parents couldn't decide. It was one of those where once they were in the US, they missed Germany. Once they were in Germany, they missed the US. But then at 10, we were living in the New York tri-state area. And my parents were like, you know what? We want you to be fluent in German. We want you to take advantage of everything we did growing up in Germany. And next thing you know, I was in boarding school in Germany.
Yeah.
So, and then spent most of my youth or remaining youth there until college here in 1989.
So boarding school in Germany as a teenager. How did that shape your independence, I guess?
Oh yeah, I mean, of course, when you're living on your own. My brother was my guardian. He was in Germany at the time for a apprenticeship in hotel management, and he was 18. He's 7.5 years older than me, and we had some fun around that because when you're 18, your brother or brother is your guardian. So I would see him on the weekends and such, but completely independent. Him and I very early on, and the main thing there was I continued with my swimming and to do it on your own, to create your own infrastructure, to sort of embrace it at a young age, 10, 11, 12, where it's your choice, right? Could I do other things? And I did take a year off where I was like, I don't want to swim anymore. But I quickly recognized on my own, this was like when I was 12 and a half, that I miss swimming. And it's the love of my life with regards to sports and the structure and the lifestyle and so forth. So that's when I returned to swimming. And I had been swimming since I'm 3. So my brother was swimming when he was 10. And my parents were like, listen, we're not driving 2 places at once, or we don't have a babysitter / daycare. So you're getting in the car. And if you're not going to swim, you're swimming. So I started very young, right? At 3 years old, I was already in the pool 5 days a week. So from there, that created the swimming background. Then in Germany and boarding school, I continued to swim. And when I returned to swimming after taking some time off on my own, where I sort of decided this is what I want. I love this. That's when things took off for me.
Yeah. What did that volume of work look like, I guess, in your later teen years? And then as you go on to American University in DC, like how much to be at elite level at that college level, how much training are you doing a week?
Well, it was very different. The European approach to swimming and the US approach to swimming was dramatically different. Um, in Europe, especially in Germany, especially at the time, it was quality over quantity. So for us, the workouts were shorter, maybe multiple a day too, but very focused on technique, very focused on the quality of swimming versus just doing yardage. When I came to the US to swim, and it was, I mean, there's a whole different story around that on even how I ended up in the US swimming. But that being said, it was pretty surprising that I jumped the volume that quickly. We went from 3,500 to maybe 4,000 yards a workout to 6, 7, 8,000 yards a workout, if not even more. So that was a big difference. That was the main difference. But even in the meantime, in the swimming world, that has changed. The US system has backed off a little bit on the volume, and the European system has upped a little bit on the volume. So they're all sort of found their sweet spot between the two.
Yeah. Well, you end up on two Olympic teams for Germany, and I've heard you humbly downplay your role on those teams, and I think it's impressive to make any sniff at the Olympics. So, what was the experience like for you? You went to Barcelona and in Atlanta, I believe, in '92 and '96.
Correct.
What was that? Athletes Village. What are the memories you took from that?
Well, in Barcelona, I got to swim and compete. In '96, I was an alternate. So some countries with swimming, they take alternates where you're just good enough that you could jump in case somebody gets sick, breaks a leg, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I was first alternate in Atlanta, which was a unique experience because I warmed up every day. I went to the pool every day, ready to go in case something came up, but it never did. So, but you get to have all that fun and
Yeah.
spend time with the athletes. But in Barcelona, yes, that was quite an experience, quite fun. You know, it's a whole different story, narrative, experience, lifestyle, because there's so much going on. There's so much to take in. You're going anything from in '92 meeting the dream team and, the original dream team
Right.
from David Robinson to Carl Malone to John Stockton to Reggie Miller to Charles Barkley. Didn't get to meet Michael or Magic. Um, my brother happened to work, remember hotel management. He happened to work for a cruise ship that had parked in the harbor. So for the Olympics, a lot of times they don't have enough hotel rooms. They'll
Right.
do the same thing in LA. And so they bring in 10, 15, 20 cruise ships and automatically have 10, 15 more hotels.
Right.
So he was on a cruise ship in Barcelona, which was great because it was rented out by Time Magazine and Sports Illustrated at the time. So they would shuttle through their most important clients or VIPs or biggest accounts, and then they would bring in U.S. Olympians to, you know, mingle with the
Mm-hmm.
clients as well as the customers. And so the funny part there was, I was on the German team, so I didn't really have access, but I had my brother,
Yeah.
so I got to go meet a lot of the teams, Karch Karai and the beach volleyball team. I mean, just these iconic things that happened in the Barcelona games, and it was always unique because they would look at me and I had the full athlete credentials on, and they're like, "Wait, what are you doing here? Why are you on this ship?" So, little things like that. But yeah, the athlete village. So if you go backwards and just think, there's two different mindsets happening. One, if you compete in the first week of the Olympics, You're totally focused. You're in your routine. You have your structure. You know exactly what you're doing down to the minute every day,
Mhm.
where to be, how this is going to unfold. I mean, we've worked through itineraries weeks in advance, when we're going to be meeting with a sports psychologist, when our massage was, when the transportation works, what kind of free time we have, when we do have a moment to see the family, when we're at the pool, when we're not at the pool, when we're eating. Everything is choreographed. But then everything stops on week 2. And
Mhm.
so now you have about 50%, a little bit more, 60% of the athletes who have a lot of energy and 4, 5, 10 years of their lives all of a sudden stops. And now we just get to play.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of just celebration, partying,
Mhm.
and it's with like-minded people behind closed doors in an athlete village that is protected and you know with security and limited access. So it turns into this very surreal living in a bubble experience.
Yeah. What a amazing experience, that not a lot of people get to experience. So you
Yeah.
were able to go twice, and I love hearing those stories, because I think that our experiences shape us as people, right? And how did the coaching that you received, either in Germany or at American University, shape you as a coach, as you got into coaching?
Well, here's the difference is that I had an Eastern European Hungarian coach from the moment I arrived in the United States to swim.
Mhm.
So originally I was with him at Michigan, and then I transferred with him to the American University in DC. And his wife worked at the World Bank, and then she got a job in DC at the World Bank. At first, she was working at the University of Michigan in the economics department. And so, as soon she's the main breadwinner, as soon as she moved to DC, he went on to DC to become an assistant coach at American University. But he's the one who saw me in Germany swim, and my original plan was to go to SC or someplace, a bigger swimming school,
Mhm.
but he convinced me really quickly to come to Michigan as well as then on to American University because he was building sort of in lack of better terms, a squad, right? We had
Mhm.
another Olympian from Indiana come in, another Olympian come in from New Orleans. And so we had this group then that he continued to cultivate. And by the time the 96 games, actually also the 92 games came along, he had like 9 Olympians working with him all summer long because he invented a new stroke of the breaststroke.
Mm.
It used to be a flatter stroke, and then he invented the wave style breaststroke that
Yeah.
everybody swims today. And so people were coming from all over the world with the opportunity to swim with him because world records were being broken left and right. And it was great because I wasn't that good, but having all these people around me raised the game, right? Like when you're in a lane with 15, 20, or multiple lanes with 15, 20 world class swimmers all summer long, as well as winter break, as well as Thanksgiving break, that they're all coming in just to spend some time swimming with him, it raises the bar on everybody. And I dramatically improved. Like I said, I was maybe on the B national team when I met him. You could even say less than that. But I quickly dropped times and improved a lot because it was also his mindset. And so back to your question with regards to coaching, I had that Eastern European, I don't really care what you say approach.
Yeah.
Just get
Yeah.
in the pool and
Tough.
get it done. Very tough.
Yeah.
But the beauty about that was he was extremely caring.
Mm.
And it came out in very subtle ways, but you knew that he really cared about his swimmers and his athletes. And he didn't always have to show it with all kinds of talk or actions. You just knew that he was 100% vested in you. He
Mm.
spent the time on deck with you at the pool. He might have not have been paying attention as much as we thought he was,
Yeah.
but he was there and he knew exactly what was going on. He never missed a time. He never missed a split. He never missed an opportunity to give a little bit of feedback, which was usually pretty harsh. But that worked for me. And again, you also have this environment where everybody is improving. So, of course, you're going to listen to him.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
very similar to coaching in the United States with a lot of, whether it's a football program or a basketball program or any program where if it's working, people give that coach a long leash.
Yeah.
As soon as the losing starts, well, then the leash gets very short. And with Joseph, in this case, it was very similar. It worked amazing for our group of people. We were almost self-selected. We were there because we knew he had the special sauce in how he was teaching the swimming and his sets and his approach and his mindset and the whole thing. And it just opened doors for me personally, that there's this whole other world of how you approach things with regards to, especially with regards to mindset.
Hmm. Yeah. Having worked with you for a couple of years, as I did, as you as my coach in some endurance events, I see that in my experience with you, in that definitely caring a lot about mindset that we'll talk about. A lot of the communication with you was short, short emails, right to the point. But there was never a doubt that you cared about the outcome and mindset. And so in hearing you describe that, I think about my experiences with you, and I think there's definitely some similarities there.
Yeah, I definitely model based off of what was influential to me, and his coaching style was very influential to me. I had one coach prior to that for 9 years in Germany, from when I got there when I was 10 to all the way through college, because I would in the summers go back and have to swim, with the team and the national team and do some club team stuff there. And so I had the same coach, very different style of coaching, very caring, very parental, very supportive, very like he was my best friend almost.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Joseph was a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph did not mince words.
Mm-hmm.
And very similar, he was just direct and to the point. He's like, there was even a time, which was always funny. I tell this story a fair amount, but that is, he literally came over to me my junior year, end of my junior year in at American, and he was like, "Listen, this swimming thing, I'm not sure it's really for you. And these other guys, they're a lot better. And, you should really focus on your studies and your
Oh,
finance degree." And he's like, I mean, I'll coach you for the next year, but, you really should keep your options open. I mean, that's
yeah,
not what you
harsh.
usually hear from a coach.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
But, and I was improving. I was still getting
yeah.
better and better each season, and my results were getting better. I'm like, what? you know but he was just being honest. He's like, swimming for others, and what he meant by it, and we had a longer conversation a couple of years later, but what he meant by it is, you have a fantastic opportunity here to get a great education.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of these guys, they're putting all their eggs in one basket to
Mm-hmm.
swim, right? They don't know what's beyond that. Are they finishing college? I don't know. Are they setting themselves up for a life beyond this? Not to be recognized at that point. Now they've all come to figure it out, but
Mm-hmm.
he cared in that sort of backhanded way of saying, like, take advantage what's in front of you. Don't get too caught up in all this, right? This swimming group and the times and the swimming world, and like, because he could also see I wanted to go to grad school, and I was like, all right, I'll be a grad assistant and pay for
Mm-hmm.
school like that. But he was like, focus on your studies. But
Yeah.
it definitely came out as, this swimming thing might not work out for you. And he had
It's,
very broken English. So it was like, excuse me? Well, jeez. So,
it's all in the delivery.
yeah.
But yeah, I think it sounds like you, like a lot of us, hopefully we take the best parts of those experiences and we use them going forward. Before you got into coaching, you found your way into triathlon, which was a big part of your life, and
Mhm.
Ironmans, and you win Coeur d'Alene, and um, you were really bound. You went into finance, right? So you were finance. You were working Charles Schwab, Wall Street. So you're describe that time. Are you balancing training for a triathlon and working full time in finance?
Sort of, but not really. So when I got my MBA, I left DC because I got my MBA in at American as well. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was done swimming at this point, and I was done with college. They both coincided at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and I had no idea. So I went to work for a landscaping company briefly in Annapolis, Maryland, from a college buddy of mine, and then sort of started the process to head to New York and work in finance, where I was a currency trader at first. For a few years there before I migrated to San Francisco, because New York and that lifestyle was very clear to me that it wasn't going to be me. And
Mm-hmm.
what it was by that is more around, in a structured financial services, actually back then it was more sort of Wall Street investment banking in that respect. I knew what my boss was doing in 5 years. I knew what his boss was doing in 5 years. You can see the path very clearly in front of you, right? You move out of a group apartment, then you have your own apartment
Yeah.
maybe, or you share with one. Then you get a house in Jersey or in Connecticut. Then you work your way up, Upper Saddle River. You have the white picket fence, the leisure suit on the weekends and the
Right.
commute. I mean, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. And
Sure.
that's truly the path of the American dream. Um, but for me, that's just not how I was wired. I was way more active and way more curious to be outdoors, coach people. I didn't know how, but that's what I enjoyed. And so it was an unsettling time, not necessarily that I wasn't good at it, because I was very good at it with regards to currency trading and finance, but it was not where my passion lies.
Yeah.
And it's your classic story where you
Yeah.
figure you're like in it and you're like, yeah, I don't know. There's got to be more to this. And luckily, I pulled the trigger pretty quickly. But I still had to go through another path in order to figure out it truly was my path, because I came to California, didn't have a job really, got sucked back into finance
Mm-hmm.
for Y2K. Remember, the world was going to melt
Sure. Yeah.
and they needed people who had a lot of a paper ticket trading background. And so I got hired by Charles Schwab to join their Y2K team. And because I still had like a Series 7 and a Series 9 to trade on
Right.
house account and pink tickets. And it was bizarre. But I went from bartending to running a team of 25 at Charles Schwab.
Wow.
I talk about it quick. But then nothing happened at Y2K. It was
Yeah.
like literally a lot of money spent by all these companies around the world for a non-event. But I then, and this is how it works, right? Like how for so many of us, I got sucked into, oh, it's a nice steady income.
Right.
I get to sort of do what I want. It's my hours. It's my team. It's my this, my that. And I stayed at Schwab for another 6 years. And I wasn't client facing, so I could do what I want. I mean,
Right.
came in the morning with regards to market hours, which is in California. You're in at like 5 a.m., 4:45 a.m. Market is open at 6:30. You're done at 1. Market closes at 1. You
Mm-hmm.
close the books. You're probably out of there at 2.
Mm-hmm.
2, maybe some days even 1 4. So then what happens is that I have these afternoons open and I start training
Mm-hmm.
and start cycling and running, not much swimming, but yeah. And that's sort of how it began, and more so. And next thing you know, I was, really hooked into the triathlon sport and doing really well. And next thing you know, I had a few friends who were like at the local triathlon club who were like, well, whatever you're doing seems to be working. Will you help us?
Mm-hmm.
Started with 4 of my friends and it grew, and I haven't stopped since. It's 25 years ago,
That's
26
awesome.
years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you left, it sounds like it was a gradual build up to leaving Schwab that second time. Did it feel scary or risky when you eventually left? Or did you have enough going on the coaching side that you were able to do it? Do you remember what that felt like?
Oh, yeah. I remember it well. So, being in the community that I was with and the results I was having, because things were going quite well when it came to triathlon, but I kept the safety net and health insurance and benefits and everything at Charles Schwab. And so, but there soon came attention. So I was coaching 20 people, 20 to 25 people on the side in the
Mhm.
afternoons or just in my own time. Still doing my job great, but my name was starting to get out there in the triathlon world, and people at work started figuring out, wait a moment, this guy
Yeah.
gets to do whatever he wants. He leaves at 1:30, he's raising triathlons, he's traveling all over the country. This little jealousy kicked in,
Yeah.
and I don't blame him. I mean,
Yeah.
I made it pretty comfortable. I hired people that were great. They were athletes. They were, it was just an easy process for me. And we all had a great time. We got great results. But when other teams and other areas of big companies see that, they want some of that, right?
Yeah.
Or they want to shut it down.
Yeah.
So in 2005, I started a company with three other partners, excuse me, that we started an Olympic style training center for masters athletes in Marin County, just
Mhm.
north of San Francisco, where we said, okay, there's enough serious athletics happening in the masters realm, and so, how about we create, like for Olympic athletes, but for masters athletes, a training center with mindset and nutrition and sports psychology and testing and body work and sports rehab and all those things that we would usually get in an Olympic training center. And let's put that into a facility in Northern California, and from skiers to cyclists to runners to swimmers,
Mhm.
all across the board. And it was great. We had all the facilities. We had VO2 max testing. We had strength work. We had a great little place in Mill Valley, California. And that was my safety net. So when I left, it was easy. I just transferred from one to the other. And it was a good time. Um,
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
was a good time to leave. So it wasn't as scary. And the investors that started the place with me were the ones who were like, listen, now's the time to take the jump. Trust yourself, trust your gut, listen to what works for you. And clearly, everything is pulling you into that area anyway. You can always go back.
So this coaching side of your life, which has been a huge part of your life, maybe it starts with triathlon coaching or marathon coaching, and I'm sure you still do some of that. But can you talk about some of the adventures people have done? Because I think there's things that you coach that I bet people listening don't even know exist as an adventure, that
Correct.
some of your clients have done. And I mean, certainly climbing Everest and things like that. I mean, what are some of the things your clients have done? Maybe the extreme, and then what is more common too?
Yeah. So there's definitely been extreme stuff that they've done all across the board. And more unique or unconventional the adventure, the more it seems like that athlete seems to find me, right? Where it's sort of
Hmm.
like, all right, I need a coach for this really weird thing I'm doing.
Hmm.
And somehow through the grapevine, they find me like that. It's not like you can advertise for something like that. You
Right.
can't put some Facebook ad out there for that. So, but what really happened is the biggest thing for me that exploded everything was COVID,
Mm.
because people had so much more time on their
Yeah.
hands, and then therefore, but all the races were shut down in the facility, so they created self-curated adventures,
Hmm.
anything from their hometown to even cycling or running somewhere or just figuring it out, right? And so ever since then, it's been primarily in that space. And we're talking over the years, anything from the first person, the fat bike across the Arabian Peninsula. So then we had to get permits and visas and things like that for, 9 different countries, and talk to, royal families to allow these, guys to take this adventure through there, to riding horseback the length of Scandinavia from the Arctic Circle as an Arctic all the way down to, Stockholm and Oslo in order to, do the full length of Norway. I've had, I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff, whether it's the first woman to ATV from, Canada to the southern tip of South America. She was on the
Wow.
road for like 4 months. The main thing we had to work on was grip strength, because you're
Yeah.
just beating yourself up. But also we trained her like riding horseback, because being on an ATV like that is like being on a horse. Like we went through all kinds of renditions. Yes, Everest, all kinds of bizarre adventures, paddle boarding, longer, Maui, the channel crossing on paddle boards. And yeah,
Some wild stuff.
yeah, it gets all across the board. I have currently somebody who wants to be the first person to mountain bike across or Tanzania to get to the base of Kilimanjaro, then go up Kilimanjaro, come back down, and get back to the ocean. Sort of things like that.
Yeah.
I have a guy who's doing the California version of that. He's going to swim from Catalina to Long Beach, then bike to the base of Whitney, then climb to the top of Whitney. Man,
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, and look, they'll keep coming, right? People keep being
Oh yeah.
creative. And I think maybe to bring it back to the everyday, I mean, those are everyday people, but they're choosing these extreme adventures and training for it. But whether it's a marathon, an Ironman, half Ironman, whatever, or ultra marathon, what do people get out of that? What is the value in doing that you have experienced or you see your clients experiencing?
Well, there's a lot of things they get out of it, right? And a lot of things that they didn't plan on getting out of it that they realized then is something that they really loved that they got out of it. Now, so let's just start it first. First of all, realizing a goal and setting a desired outcome and following the steps through in order to achieve that thing on the far edge of what we deem as possible, because that's what adventures are.
Hmm.
They put us close to the edge and allow us to sort of expand our comfort zone. What was unfamiliar has become familiar, right? And if I can do this, what else can I do?
Hmm.
Right. If I can
Yeah.
find the time to train for this, well, then how come I can't find the time to 10x my business
Hmm.
or spend more time with my family and so forth? So there's that. You build the confidence through the exposure and the reps and the consistency over time that the journey teaches you who you actually are and what you're capable of. But then there's this whole other side of things, right?
Hmm.
Where you realize that we're wired to be outdoors. We're wired to do something consistently over a long period of time. That's how we endured. That's how we evolved as humans, right? Our ability to be patient in an ever changing environment turned allowed us to live longer than any other species, right?
Hmm.
Homo sapiens is around because we outlasted, we endured, we were patient in our development beyond the other humanoid type species, right?
Correct.
There's so many aspects of this thing that goes deep into our psychology, that goes deep into our limbic system, that resonates with all kinds of signals and aspects that we never knew is such an important part of us. And that the easiest way to recognize it in so many ways is that when you walk into an REI or you're paging through Outside Magazine or National Geographic, there's something when you see these big open spaces or these adventures or camping or the glow of a fire that it goes deep inside us and there's something that turns on.
Hmm.
And that is what pulls people into adventure. Now, then there's the other aspect. In doing endurance events, you spend a lot of time with yourself out there,
Hmm.
thinking, processing, downloading, right? And whether it's your day, whether something you're troubled with family or work or community or anything else, or with yourself, you have time. And it's not necessarily that you're going to turn off the podcast or the music that you're listening to. Your brain does it automatically despite listening to something
Hmm.
because you're in a very repetitive motion. We've all been in places where whether we're walking, hiking, running, cycling, where all of a sudden you realize, well, where'd the last 10 minutes go? Right? What
Right.
happens there is that subconscious, the small mind and the ego mind and all these things, they start opening portals. And I know that sounds a little strange, but all those creative thoughts come because, or that deeper thinking comes because we put the small mind, the busy mind at ease. We
Hmm.
lull it to sleep, right? If you
Yeah.
think about walking, why Nietzsche and the big philosophers always went for a walk. Thoreau, right? You go for a walk because the repetitive action, our brain doesn't work in the sense that it always looks at the next step, shifting weight, What is under it? Now move my leg back. And it's an autonomic system, right? It
Mhm.
just does it by itself. But the brain is paying attention to it. So the small mind, the subconscious is busy doing that, paying attention to that. But that lets the other part of us, the deeper mind, right? The that portal to open, and our thoughts and our creativity and our emotions have this different outlet when we're doing that. That's why the thinking happens so well there.
Yeah.
And
It,
many people overlook that.
it feels like we need that more than ever. I mean, we're so distracted, right, by our phones and there's so many ways to be distracted. I feel like whether you're pursuing an endurance event or some kind of training, that's a competitive advantage, you know. I mean, like that gives you fuel for the day, you know, fuel for the week that you take into work, and you take those lessons into work or in your parenting. And I think it betters us by doing those things.
Well, we're clearly rewarded by it, right? So
Mhm.
there's the one avenue where you say, okay, when I go through the journey and the process of training or getting ready for these events, it is so rewarding, that extra thinking, that time. There's something going on there that we didn't even realize that works so well, and why we're so drawn to it, right?
Yeah.
The benefits come; they come for everybody. There's never a person in 25 years of doing this that I've come across that isn't like, yes, that journey, that process was actually better than the event.
Right.
Right. Now,
Right.
if you're in the highest level of the process and you're the competitor and going to the Olympics or, world championships, and of course you're focused on that. It's a different process there. But we're talking for us as masters athletes and sort of
Yes.
just doing this by choice as a hobby. Then there's also this other aspect of our psyche, that what you're alluding to, and that is when we care for ourselves physically, mentally, spiritually, first, or the first part of our day, or ensure that that's happening, then we have more energy to give to others,
Hmm.
right? When our cup is full, then we can empty that cup in service of, right? I call a lot of that being the lighthouse. We strengthen ourselves first, whether through training, whether through meditation, whether through breath work, whether through going for a walk or run or hike or sitting in the sun in the morning. We fill our soul, right? We do something that fills our soul. Well, for
Yes.
the rest of the day, we have the energy, the fortitude, the perseverance, the patience, the insight to then deliver for others. And some people conflate that or confuse that with selfishness,
Mm.
but yet there is that counter. And all of us that have gone through this know exactly that that's how it works.
Yeah.
And it's, again, deeply wired into our evolutionary psychology and biology that in order to be a part of the tribe, we had to contribute. And how do we contribute if it's not with our hands or tools or being the strongest or this? Through giving,
Right.
through support, through service, through insight, there's so much that's happening there that gets fueled by our own inner strength.
Yeah. So much of your coaching is the mental as much as the physical. And I want to keep talking about that because I've experienced and I just think it's so valuable. There is a piece that you talk about balance, you know, I mean, and balance changes, right? Depending on where you are in your life and your kid's age and where your job pressures. But the three legs of the stool and navigating that. So I think athletes do have to be careful, right? That they how they manage, because you can really get into it, right? You've seen triathletes and marathon runners where that's all they're thinking about. So how do you bring in that element into your coaching?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just to even answer that real quickly, what you just said, their performance actually decreases when they focus only on one leg of the stool, right?
Mm,
So the leg of the stool, I always describe that as three legs on a round flat platform. And one leg is our athletic lives, the other one might be our professional one, and the other one might be a personal one. And they're not always at equal length. There's no such thing as balance. We all know that. The stool can't be level perfectly.
Right.
Right? There's always going to be a tension there. There's the tension between what we need to do, what we want to do, and what we know we should be doing. And that balance and that integration of all three is the key here. Now, at times, the one leg of the stool is going to be longer, right? And so if
Hmm.
one leg on a three-legged stool is longer, it's a little off balance, right?
Hmm.
By definition. But the other two aren't gone. We're not overlooking family or professional life or athletic life. Depends which leg of the stool is longer. So the important thing there from a work life, family, or personal life integration versus balance is that you recognize how long the leg of the stool is, what's out of balance currently, knowing it's temporary, knowing that this is a push for work, or knowing this is a challenging time for family that requires me, or knowing that this is a good time, a season in life where I can actually do this training. My family leg of the stool is pretty balanced, is doing pretty well. My professional leg of the stool is doing pretty well as well. So now this one might be longer, right? It doesn't mean the other ones go away. Otherwise, you're not on a stool, you fall over. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
You need to maintain some strength in the other ones. Otherwise, it becomes too crooked, too unlevel. It's no longer a stool. It's not a platform to sit on or use for weight. So that's the analogy I use. But mindset is a key insight to that because mindset is the lens through which we view challenges with, technically all of our lives with, right?
Hmm.
Mindset is always present, but we never talk about mindset when things are going great.
Yeah.
We only insert mindset and the concepts of mindset once things become challenging, once we face adversity, once difficulty enters the situation or our lives, right? And then we hearken back to, well, what is mindset to me and values and all that? And we think it's about pushing through, but actually mindset using that lens and taking that lens and saying, okay, opening the aperture, am I taking it all in? And I understanding the situation, what's going on? Why am I feeling like this? Why am I responding like this? Clearly, this is important to me, or else I wouldn't even notice that I'm feeling out of balance, etc.
Hmm.
And then sharpening or closing that aperture on the lens in order to hunker down, to put blinders on. What am I focused on? Where is my priority, right? I mean, we're talking one aspect of mindset here that I work with a lot of clients on, but it's understanding is going on in our surroundings and being able to take that in and make the best decision given the circumstances at the moment. Who we were 5 years ago and who we are now, totally different. We can't compare ourselves to that version, right? As I
Hmm.
like to say, life doesn't get emptier. No, we all just gain capacity,
Yeah.
right? If you think to yourself what you were capable of 5 years ago, workload or all this stuff, and how much more you're doing now, it would have been overwhelming 5 years ago. But
Yeah. You
now
wouldn't believe it.
exactly, but we've increased capacity, right? We're able to sort of gain that perspective. Well, the same thing happens day to day and how we're choosing and looking into the future with regards to capacity.
Yeah.
And what is my priority and makes most sense here?
And we're talking about running and endurance events, but this applies to life, right? It applies to all these other elements of your life. And we talk about that a lot on this podcast. I mean, there's a lot of times we talk about sports and things, but there's so many, correlations like putting a plan together, following the plan. And the thing about your coaching, Chris, is it's not just like you need to run, 5 miles on this day, 20 miles on this day. It's like you start off with like, why are you even doing this? Right. And understanding where people's motivations come from. So is it as much mental as it is physical for most people?
I would say it's all mental,
Mm.
right?
That's
Because
encouraging.
technically, coaching, and this is just sort of save people a lot of money, you can get a great coaching plan off of a website. or
Yeah.
chat GPT these days, right? But how does it integrate in your life, right? And how does it work for your day to day? And how does it fit your individual needs, right? So there's that. But the important thing is it goes down into the motivation aspect of this. Motivation is very short term. Willpower runs out very quickly,
Yeah.
right? And commitment begins where motivation ends. And so we need to know what we're committed to and why, right? And wait a
Hmm.
moment, do I even want that why? Do I want it because I should be the type of person to want that thing? Oh, I should be the type of person to run a marathon, right? Those people are fit and they're healthy in this. So I want to be that type of person. Well, that doesn't mean you want to run a marathon. That means you
Right.
want to be fit and healthy.
Right.
Or, right. So we got to really dive in, because when motivation runs out and that commitment begins, what's going to sustain you isn't somebody else's wants or what you should want. It's got to resonate deeply within you, because back to the three-legged stool, if you can't get out of bed at 4:30 in the morning on some mornings to get it done before your kids' soccer practice and you
Hmm.
have to go to work or whatever the daily, well, then you're going to run out of that motivation, willpower, even the desire to do the event, right? You'll start moving the goalposts on what the desired outcome is, or you'll start making compromises, or then you'll start rationalizing. And once we start rationalizing in business or with our family, it's, as Jordan Peterson says, it's a low quality action, right? It's just not
Hmm.
the best outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's a lot that goes into this. And it's, again, mindset, for whether it's for my executive clients, for my military operators, or my athletes. It's understanding, wait a moment, what am I doing? Where am I setting my priorities? How come am I doing this? Do I really believe in what I'm saying, or am I just saying what I just should be saying? And it comes up all the time. As you know, I use endurance as a vehicle to have this discussion,
Yes. Yes.
right? But for most of us, and the beauty of, and this is why we all like athletics as such a good example, it's an identity we can play out and we can keep in a vacuum or in a bubble over here to play out who we are in the rest of our lives. Our
Hmm.
consistency, our positivity, our following through on our words or our actions, right? All those things. And when we do it there, it'll seep and slowly leak into the rest of our lives.
And like a lot of things in our lives, there's not a hack. The hack is hard work. The hack is hard work, right? I mean, we call this pay your dues, and so I think that's a big part of it. I think almost anyone can run a marathon if they give themselves enough time. If you
Yeah.
build up, you don't injure yourself. I talk to people all the time about that. I said a lot of people could run a marathon. You just got to give yourself enough time. So, and that's again like life, right? There's a lot you can do if you put the plan together, stick to it, and you do the work. Um, One of the things I think
It's all about expectation.
mm,
It's all about expectations, right? So to double down on what you said, it's not a
mhm,
question if you'll run a marathon. It's only a question of when,
right,
right? So that's one thing. But then what what are you putting on the top that creates the pressure or the expectation? So then we break down, well, what's your narrative? What's running a marathon to you? And a lot of people have this image of head back, just sprinting it. Like,
yeah,
that's not running a marathon, right?
yeah,
So we have to change that. Then they have numbers in their head or paces in their head. Let's change those expectations. That's not reality, or that's
right,
not where you currently are. You can get there, but
hmm,
currently, no. So it's the same with work. It's the same with family. It's the same in any situation. How do you envision this? What do you see this, how this is playing out? Or like, wait a moment, wait a moment. That's not reality. So
right,
let's bring it back. And guess what? If that's too easy, or if that's not meeting your expectations of who you are as a person, like I have high standards, well, guess what? Give yourself a longer runway. You'll still get there. But let's first go through these first iterations, get your reps, pay your dues, so
Hmm.
that then you can raise it to another level, right? But you
Yeah,
can't rush this stuff in anything. You can't rush raising kids. You can't rush, you know, work and career, right? You have to go at the pace that's presented. And the expectations is a big conversation most of us don't really spend time with, because what's my definition of this outcome? And how can I take a little bit of the pressure off the top? And even those people who work really well with pressure, because there's definitely those, they need the pressure to motivate them
sure.
and get the willpower. Now we're back to square one.
Yeah,
Like if you work well with pressure, that means you're missing a why, a deeper
yeah.
why.
Hmm. The other part of that is, and I felt this in your coaching, is facing fear, right? Fear of failure, fear of bonking, if you've bonked in a race before. And I will just give you a quick story on that in your coaching when you were mainly coaching me to run the Grand Canyon rim to rim to rim, and which I can explain was a fantastic experience. But I did a marathon in leading up to that. And one of your messages was run this marathon without fear. Like, you have to run it within your capabilities, but what happens if you just let go and you don't worry about, bonking or what those last 4 miles are going to be like? And I did that, and I set a PR, and you got in that flow state, and to be able to get over that hurdle, that I've used that multiple times since then in other races or in other situations. And what's your thought on fear and how much it holds people back?
I talk about fear basically 20 hours of a 24-hour day, because yes, you're totally right. So what you experience there is one aspect that I push people through, and that is, taking what's part of the expectations with regards to marathons. But one of the big things I try to get people to work through or understand a little bit better is let go of control. We always want to control the outcome, control how we feel, control. We're forward-looking humans. That's what, again, what makes us very unique, and that we can create a vision out there in the future of something that doesn't exist and methodically work towards it. But you learn so much more about yourself when you just step out on the limb and go.
Yeah.
Right? In business, it's failing fast, right? There's this whole like, until you're in that place, you won't know what you're capable of. There's nothing more boring for a marathon runner when it comes to self growth as well as personal development. And if you've done 5 26-mile training runs, you're going to get to this and be like, okay, this is only going to be a little bit faster, but I
Mhm.
already know what's going to happen. Boring.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Right. Instead, I want to only have gone 18. I want that curiosity. I
Yeah.
want that unknown, because that's where we learn the most about ourselves. Who we are in adversity is who we are. The truth of who we are comes out when we're facing ourselves on the edge. Right. And that's where the fun lies, because that's where you're learning in Technicolor. Things are going really fast here. And you identify things about yourself. Well, I'm a panicker. I'm not I'm super calm. I get super quiet, whatever it is. So for in a marathon, what's great is you were going to, hopefully you didn't, but hopefully you got to an edge where it's like, I don't want to keep going. I can't sustain this pace.
Yeah. I've been there before. Yeah.
And having that mindset where you're like, despite that, I
Mm.
will continue. That's where the grit and the perseverance
Yeah.
starts really going up, because you're stepping into the unknown. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm willing to find out.
Yeah.
Right. And that happens in so many cases. And that's why so that's the type of fear of control. Right. But fear lies in uncertainty. So there's this concept in positive psychology and sports psychology as well, is when uncertainty has three ingredients: duration, path, and outcome. And when those three start boiling over, we fall into a full fear state. Uncertainty plus anxiety, those two together equal fear.
Mm.
And anxiety is future worry, whereas Uncertainty is the ingredients of those three things. We don't know how long it'll last. We don't know how we'll continue, and we don't, and the outcome is in jeopardy. COVID was a great example of this, right? Where we thought we didn't know what it was, how long COVID would last. We didn't know what the solution was, vaccine, this, whatever it was, we didn't know.
Right.
And we didn't know, will we survive? Will society change? Will my parents die? Like, you just don't know, right? And so when those three are high, fear is really present. But when you can take that and chunk it up, all right, let's reduce the duration. I'm going to run the next mile and figure out the next mile after. How will I do it? Well, I'm going to run it like this, holding this pace or this form, or I'm going to focus on my footwork, or I'm going to focus on my posture. That's the how. That's the path. Outcome. When I get to that next mile marker, I will do this, right? Boom. All of a sudden, fear goes way down, right? And we're in the moment. That anxiety is gone because we're in action removes doubt state. So fear is constantly present. Fear is constantly part of our narrative, but we want to learn to dance with that devil. And that's what mindset is. Mindset is your ability, again, the lens through which you view challenges with. In most cases, fear is that challenge. We fear something in that challenge.
Yeah. How much energy is wasted, right, through fear and anxiety, again, sport and life, how much time we spend worrying about things or not taking action because of fear. And it's just wasted energy, right? It is just wasted energy.
But you can make it work for you. You can harness all that energy. And once you recognize the fear, again, learn to dance with that devil, then you can harness the fear energy into learning, failing fast, growth, post-traumatic growth. All those types of things are taking the energy that you would spend on fear and harnessing it into something and shifting the direction, right? It's like those superheroes that catch or in like Kung Fu Panda, if you have younger kids, you guys know, he catches the fireball and he shoots it in the other direction. That's all that is. That's the significance of that movie, is like taking your insecurities, taking your fears and redirecting them.
Yes.
But we have that same capability, again, if we are aware of what's happening. And it's whether it's, in the military, learning to detach and having situational awareness, whether it's in, taking your time on how you're making decisions with family or in business. It's just awareness and thoughtfulness to then make a good decision.
Yeah. And the benefits, I think, that come from, and look, I've done it wrong more times than I've done it right. I will say that. But the benefits that come from getting on the other side of that fence, the other side of fear, and experiencing like, hey, I just did something that's pretty cool. Like finishing that Grand Canyon 43-mile all day run with friends. Like, I will remember that the rest of my life. And I think about how awesome it was running across the base of the Grand Canyon as the sun was coming up, and the mental fortitude it took in those last 3-4 miles where it's 3,000 feet of elevation, like it was the hardest thing I ever did and the best thing I ever did. But you coached me to get there. And once you go through something like that and you have that on the other side, you can tap back into that in much smaller ways, right?
Yeah. You have that library within you.
Yeah.
Right? You always have experiences like that to tap into, to see who you were in that situation. And you can just ask yourself, why can't I be that version right now? And that's where you don't want to give yourself the excuses.
Yeah.
But the beauty of experiences like that, memory is an experience with an emotion attached, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we want to understand what the emotion was that made it so powerful, so that I remember it for the rest of my life. Because the friends you did the Grand Canyon with had the same experience.
Yeah.
They ran on the same day. They had the same weather. They ran the same trail as you, right? But your memory is different or unique because you attach different emotions to it. Memory plus an emotion, experience plus an emotion equals a memory.
Yeah.
And so That's why, again, who was I in that moment? How did I feel? What was I overcoming? Having all that in the memory banks, and that's the library we're tapping back into. And it's universal. It applies in anything that we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And you also mentioned something there that I think is key because the people that I ran that with, I've done other races with, we stay in touch, we do runs together. And the thing about endurance community is it is community, like a lot of things, right? But there is community if you do these things with other people. And there's so much value in that. Wouldn't you agree?
There is, but I'm of a different mindset, right? Like
You're the individual
I'm the
or
individual in a lot of ways, but I think it's important we spend time on our own
mm,
in that, right? Of course, doing it with people, but at the same time, also ensuring that inner narrative is always with us,
mm,
whether people are around us or not.
mhm,
And so we need time to ourselves to hear that inner narrative, to hear that monologue, that self talk. And it, in most cases, we notice it because it's not positive, right? And so,
mhm.
therefore, that spending time with that is very important
Yeah. Because when
because
it comes
how
down to it, when you're hitting that wall, right, you've got to make a decision on whether you're going to keep going or not. It's up to
correct.
you and what you
Well,
do.
actually, in the Grand Canyon, you don't have a choice.
Well,
You
yes,
have to
yeah,
that's the
that's like getting a
that's the
helicopter.
yeah,
You know,
exactly. But that's also the better we can hear our inner narrative in times like that, the better we can hear it when things, because it is dictating so much of our day and our decisions and our challenges all the time,
yeah,
right? It's running in the background. And these reps we get in endurance athletics to spend time hearing that inner narrative, like I was saying, time in our head when we're out there doing the thing, whether hiking, walking, training, rucking, running, cycling, whatever, is so valuable because you get better at hearing the whisper. And when something's saying, whether it's your gut in a positive way, or if it's, the imposter syndrome or the inner judge saying things in a negative way. But that's the lens. If we can
mhm,
hear that and evaluate that and not allow it to mess with our decision making or hear it and help our decision making, but we just have to be able to work with that inner voice. And again, that's what you can't get that in the gym.
yeah,
None of us lose ourselves in the gym. We're busy counting.
right,
We're busy doing right. Next station, movement, technique. You can't do that. You have to do it in a very repetitive motion. It doesn't even work on the treadmill because even on the treadmill, time stands still. You're like, that's the
right,
longest 4 minutes of my life,
right,
right?
right.
So it has to be out in nature where our mind is sort of at ease and it's bigger seen than our brain is capable of capturing all those little details.
And I think on that piece, like for me, like 98% of my training is on my own, right? I got to do it in the morning or get it done. But there is value in seeing what other people are doing or hearing about, see other people's successes, and just see, I think that energy that comes from people that are doing cool things, people that are
Yeah.
doing cool
Well, even
events.
what I was saying earlier with the swimmers, like they raised me to another
Right.
level, right? So
Exactly.
it was
Yeah.
important in that. But I'm just saying there's a delicate space somewhere there where because you overcame the difficulties on your own, it
Mhm.
adds some depth and more meaning to it versus, we
Yeah.
did it together like this. And
Yeah.
it just adds a little bit extra layer of confidence and, grit to it.
Yeah. So, perfect time to talk about 29029 and to
Yeah.
describe that for people, which I look at this event and I think, man, I wish I would have come up with that idea. Like, I think it's such a cool event. And I'm
Yeah.
actually just texted a buddy that I did the Grand Canyon with the other day, sent him the Whistler one because we're up in the
Hmm.
Northwest. I said next year, I think we got to look at. I'm doing this with or without you, but
Yeah.
um, so Everest, the top of Everest, folks, 29,029 feet,
Feet.
and right, and so
Yep.
this is called Everesting, where you hike up a mountain, say at Whistler or Jackson Hole, and you bring the gondola down, you end up walking it, hiking it enough times to you hit 29,029. So you've hiked the equivalent of Mount Everest. You have 36 hours to do it typically. And you've been involved with this as a speaker and a coach. What have you witnessed in watching this event evolve?
Yeah, I've been with them since day one, so it's been a fun journey. We went from one event in Stratton, Vermont in 2017 to 9 events all over the or North
Wow.
America right now. So, and they sell out in a matter of 15 minutes on our ticket launch day in November. So, it's been crazy to watch and grow with them. What I experience with it is it's for so many, it's their first taste of ultra endurance. And so many of them. So it's a 20-week training plan that you get with the entry fee.
Mm-hmm.
And we have coach calls and we have topic specific calls. And we prepare you as best we can for the mountain. And then we're on site to help you get through the adventure. But again, you have 36 hours and you have time out there struggling, right? And most of these
Right.
places, it's altitude. Whistler's not that bad. Neither is Stratton, but let's say Jackson next week. We start at the base at 62 and go to, just under 9,000.
Yeah.
We'll be doing Aspen later this year, where we start at 82 and go to almost 11.
Wow.
So it's a challenge. It's a very hard challenge. We've had Olympic athletes, professional athletes, all kinds of big name health and wellness influencers, and every single one of them, regardless of how fit, say, "I'm surprised how challenging this is."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you think gondola down and then I get a rest, but you're going straight up a ski slope. And seeing people go through their first ultra endurance journey and the smiles and the joy and the insights they gain from that is pretty powerful.
Yeah. And they do a really nice job. I mean, you can tell how it's curated. It's very professional. It looks like it's a great experience. So they do a great job marketing. Um, why, why do you think people have responded to that? It's a controlled environment and a challenge where they get the support, or what is it that's resonating with people that it's selling out so fast?
It's safe,
Yeah.
right? It's safe. It's in a controlled environment. You can do it with your friends and
Hmm.
peers and family. So there's that, right?
Hmm.
And again, what you don't often get an opportunity to do something that unique and that sits in a category on its own of doing something like 29,029 feet of elevation gain. It's more than Everest, right? Because at Everest, you start at base camp and you work your way up. It's
Hmm.
technically 11,000 feet. But here you start at sea level and do the entire thing. So it's a pretty amazing feat to accomplish.
If people want to know more about you, Chris, and your coaching and just what you're all about, where are the best places to find you?
So, with regards to 29029, you can definitely find it at 29029everesting.com. My coaching is at aimpcoaching.com. AIMP stands for Advancing the Integration of Mindset and Performance. So you can find me there. And, social media is AIMP Coach.
Yeah, perfect. And what's the next evolution of your coaching? I mean, it seems like 29029 is keeping you pretty busy, but is it between that and the individual coaching that you're doing?
Yeah, I have this third branch where we started an adventure club. So it's like a combination of YEO, EO from a business aspect. So we have business forums and we have a variety of very high-end speakers and business
Mhm.
coaches. And then every quarter, I take the members of this club on an adventure. So one of the adventures, funny enough, this year was rim to rim to rim for
Oh,
half of them. Those who opted into that, the other half opted into just one way, rim to rim.
yeah.
And so each quarter, I take them somewhere in North America, and we do one heck of an adventure. But what's great is that you get together as, again, community, as a group. They already talk every month with business forums, and it's based off of their enterprise and their revenue size. And so they have that. And then we get together in person and do hard things. So that's a third branch. So they're all sort of along the same lines. One, I curate myself. One, we have a closed platform with regards to a closed course, and it's, you know, very repeatable at 29029. And then my own coaching. Yeah. So they all sort of fall into the same category.
Well, having experienced it firsthand, I think, you know, whether it's you or other coaches, you know, I'd encourage people to look into that, focus on mindset, because I think the cost is a drop in the bucket compared to what people spend on golf or whatever their hobbies are, you know, and the rewards are, you know, come back tenfold.
The beauty of mindset there is that because it is in every aspect of your life, the more you understand it, the more you catch yourself on how you're applying it. And it's the simple question: who do I want to be, not 5 years from now and in this global view, but in the next 5 minutes, right? Who do I want to be walking into this meeting? Who do I want to be for Sally, my employee that I have a one-on-one with right now? Who do I want to be walking in the door to my family? Who do I want to be, how I show up for this person or that situation? That's constantly mindset, framing that and optimizing that so that you are actually writing the chapter of your book versus just reading it and playing a side role. That's mindset. At every moment in time, in every situation, who do I want to be talking to you on this podcast? How do I want to show up? And that's not just a switch you can turn on. That takes reps. That takes, you know, working through it and evaluating and identifying those character traits, the values that I represent, so that the true me shows up and it comes natural. It's not like some sort of, well, he's trying to be this. No, this is who he is or who she is. That's mindset.
Yeah. And there's value in the consistency of it, right? Endurance is about consistency, and and that continues to show up in all those aspects.
Correct.
Yeah. I heard you say, and I wrote this down: fear sits on the wall between our current reality and the opportunity for growth on the other side. It makes the outcome more meaningful. And we touched on that. But I think we can take anything from that. You know, the devil sits on that wall, right, between our current reality and the opportunity on the other side. So find your way over that wall. You keep helping people do that. And you've helped me do that. And I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Chris, thanks for being here today.
Absolutely.